Depending on who you ask, a lot of people would say that the gaming industry is trending downward and that gaming as a whole is dying. And while I personally think that's a bit of an exaggeration, I say that overall there has been a decline, at least in the quality of video games. Now that's not to say that I don't still enjoy gaming or that there aren't some phenomenal games being made, but when it comes to speaking on the general quality of video games, then yeah, in my opinion it has gone down. And this could take form in many ways, whether it be bug-ridden games, unnecessary remasters, or uninspired franchises. So, who's to blame? I'm stating the obvious here, but of course companies will act in their own best interest in order to turn a profit. But that doesn't mean that we, the customer, are let off the hook, because in my opinion, we've definitely contributed to the current state of the industry, regardless of if it's dying or not. Yes, you can call me a victim blamer if you want, but I think this really boils down to three main reasons. And before I continue, let me preface this by saying that these reasons aren't necessarily exclusive to people who play video games. I'm sure you can find plenty of other areas where these are applicable, but for the sake of this video, I wanted to focus on gaming. So let's get started with reason number one. Gamers are quick to forget. Almost 10 years ago, I was lucky enough to get the PS4 within the first month of it coming out. And when I got my hands on the system and was able to finally unbox it and set it up, I was really excited to see what this new console could do. Now obviously that makes sense, right? It's a terrible feeling having saved up hundreds of dollars just to buy a PS4 and have it collect dust. But I was naive. And what I didn't know at the time was that I was going to experience an even worse feeling. Battlefield 4 was coming in hot off the hype and success of Battlefield 3, which had come out just 2 years prior. Now with COD losing popularity, things were certainly looking up for EA and DICE. But more importantly, things were looking up for me. Finally, there was a next-gen first-person shooter with all the grandiose maps and all the features that Battlefield was known for. And well, I hated everything about it. Being unable to save a campaign or join a match that was actually playable, and I felt ripped off. But there's one thing that's worse than being played for a fool, and it's being played for a fool twice. Because although Battlefield 4 was a mess, at least one of my favorite video game franchises was making a return, this time being the first fully next-gen installment in the series. Now I tried to keep my expectations low for Assassin's Creed Unity, but just being honest here, I really couldn't contain my excitement. Well, did the game live up to the hype? Now lucky for me, it only took 2 negative experiences for me to learn my lesson. It's the reason I never buy games at launch anymore, and will probably never do so again. It's why I wasn't bothered by the Cyberpunk launch, and why to this day I still haven't played the game. Sure, it means having to wait a bit of time, but because of this, I'm happy to say that I haven't felt ripped off like I did since Unity. I do my best to remember the times I've been burned in the past and try to exercise a bit of patience when deciding on getting a game. And it's helped me avoid train wrecks like Battlefield 2042, which I probably would have fallen victim to in the past. Now worst of all is that problems like this could be avoided, but it's the responsibility of the customer to voice their opinions in one way or another. Otherwise companies will keep thinking that they can get away with it. Well, unfortunately, these companies only understand one language, which brings me to my next point. Gamers don't speak with their money. As much as gaming is an art, and all the people that come together and work on them are artists, they both belong to one collective, known as a company. And companies speak one language. I see some of the most popular video games like FIFA and 2K, even GTA 5, get met with backlash almost on a cyclical basis. Whether it be that the game is too similar to the last one or that it's obvious the developers are getting greedy and lazy. The issue though is that these complaints and backlash might have some impact, but it's not nearly as loud as speaking with your wallet. Now remember, as I mentioned earlier in the video, these companies are focused on making money and turning a profit. In my opinion, there's nothing inherently wrong with this. A lot of people do work really hard to bring these games into fruition, and so they should be compensated adequately for it. Where this becomes an issue is how companies use sales and revenue as metrics of success. Now if a game is sold and then received negatively, sure, companies will take note, but if you want a company to freak out, then not buying the game altogether sends an even stronger message. After all, the money's been made once the game is sold, so they can always do damage control later on. In fact, one of the rare times that I've seen a company get dragged through the mud as much as they did was CD Projekt Red. Yes, they made a ton of money, and yes, they've been working on improving the game, but that was a rare instance of a company having to face the consequences of their actions. For every one case like this, there's probably 100 more where companies have been able to get away scot-free. But let's circle back though. Speaking with your wallet sounds simple enough, but one of the big issues with this is that it relies heavily on a community. After all, to a company, missing out on $100,000 in revenue is a much bigger deal than missing out on just $100. I think GTA Online is a pretty good example of this. Although people complain about how stale it is, or how they want Rockstar to just move on and make a new game, Rockstar's made a lot of money from GTA Online in the form of microtransactions. Despite how you may feel about the situation, money is still being poured into the game. And if a company is continuing to make money, then from their point of view, why would they change their formula? Don't fix what isn't broken, right? But on the topic of GTA 5 and GTA Online, this brings us to the third and final reason. It's the reason why a lot of people even bother spending money on microtransactions in the first place. Gamers just want to have fun. For the majority of people, video games are a great way to unwind, to get lost in a world, or to catch up with friends. And one of the best things about gaming is that there's different ways to enjoy it. For some people, trophy hunting or competitive play might be their idea of fun. For others, it could be using their sense of creativity. And ultimately that's why we play video games. They're enjoyable and they're fun. Plus, after a long day of school or work, a lot of us could really use a way to unwind and let off some steam. So is it unreasonable to expect people to keep up to date with the current gaming politics? And no, I don't mean politics like this. I mean with regards to the current state of video games. For example, how well a video game performs on different consoles, using different settings. If you're watching this video, you may be one of those people, but I believe that a large chunk of gamers simply see an ad online, or even through word of mouth, and then they decide to pre-order or buy a game. So to me, I think it's understandable that people would just want to play video games. They don't have to think about canceling their pre-order so that they can send a message to these companies. And I know this point kinda goes against the previous ones I made, but I do think that there's a lot of validity to this. I'm not saying that people are in the right or wrong here. I'm just saying that it's understandable. Yes, it's frustrating when you try to play a game and it's too buggy to play. Now sure, it'll make you mad, but if you only have a limited amount of time to play in a week, you'll probably try to make the most of it and either stomach through the glitches or just move on altogether. Now this also ties in with the topic of microtransactions, and we can use GTA Online as an example for this. If you only have a few hours to play a week, you probably want to experience the game to its fullest without having to grind away. Now because you only have X amount of time to play per week, you probably want to spend it doing what you intended to do. Have fun. To go back to the initial question, I see a lot of people ask if gaming is dying. And it's hard not to think that when you look at some of the most popular franchises like Battlefield and Saints Row, and seeing the way these games have turned out. One of the most popular videos on this topic tackles this question really well, but I did want to highlight the top comment from this video, because I think it explains what's going on in the industry. I always see this question proposed. Gaming isn't dying, it's just that the AAA industry has run stagnant. Too many execs trying to copy off each other without realizing why things that work actually work. The innovation in gaming is happening at the indie level and sometimes AA games, but never AAA because they deem it too risky. We're just having a change in power. Current AAA companies will vacate the throne as newcomers battle for the spot with creativity. And for me personally, I think that if we continue to voice our opinions while also voting with our dollars, then in due time, we'll see the improvement that we're hoping for. Now if you made it all the way to the end of the video, I'd really appreciate it if you could go ahead and like the video if you enjoyed it. Now I've got plenty of gaming related videos planned for the coming weeks, in addition to video topics that I just find interesting. So make sure to go ahead and hit subscribe so you don't miss out. Now thanks for watching, and catch you in the next one.